Welcome to our very first Maker Talk.
Hey.
We plan on doing a lot of these in the near future, bringing in some of our members and industry professionals to give a little talk, little stories, little advice about the industry that they're in. And today I'd like to welcome our podcast panel. We got any podcasters? Yeah.
Give it up for yourself.
Always good when a panel applauds for themselves.
You did that.
So I'll just go through and I'll introduce everybody on stage with me so nobody is too confused about what's going on here. This is not one massive podcast, but rather 3 discrete podcasts. So on my left, we got Les Gaddis here, and he is the host of the Capturing Light podcast, and that is a podcast by a director of photography for a director of photography. Can you tell us any more about it?
You covered it.
That's
exactly what it is. It's a podcast about cinematography. I'm a director of photography, and I talk to other cinematographers.
Awesome. And, you know, with a podcast like that being out there, you've been doing it since 2015, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that much resource, that much tools out there for future DPs is going to be a problem. There are too many movies.
Definitely.
So that brings us to our second podcast group here. This is the Too Many Movies podcast. I think I've got Alex, Chris, and Josh here with me, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Can you guys tell us about your podcast?
Yeah, so I got this, guys.
All right.
So, yeah, it's a movie review comedy podcast. It's got trivia. It's got games. We talk about what we've been watching. It's just we recommend some stuff. We talk about one movie a week, and it's chaotic, and it's like Eric Andre mixed with, I don't know, around the actors table, I guess.
It's in the title. There are too many movies.
Yeah,
and we're just like overwhelmed movie fans that are constantly looking for new things to watch, and we curate watch lists each week with different things that we're watching. So it's it's a lot to talk about, obviously, every week.
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I know a few of us in the building have checked out the podcast and really enjoyed it.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
And over there, so far from me, so distant, I miss you. We have the Jagged Little Feels podcast with Taylor and Christy.
Hi.
So,
Yeah, I mean, we just talk about mental health, all things mental health, relationships, astrology, sex, just everything. I think mental health really encompasses all aspects of our lives. And we actually started during the pandemic, like right when everything was kind of happening.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of took all that energy and put it into this.
Ultimately, our mission was to destigmatize and normalize mental health conversations that we feel like need to be had. So, and I mean, ultimately to entertain, inform, you know, and promote the optimization of self.
Yeah.
okay, so now when I hear mental health podcast, my first thought is something like, you know, Headspace or something, a lot of dusty books, corduroy glasses, that kind of stuff, tweed.
No,
but
it's
it
not.
doesn't sound like it's like that.
No, we're just too...
It's like that meets, did you ever watch that Paris and Nicole show back in the day?
Literally, a Simple Life meets
Right,
all of
Simple
that.
Life meets Headspace.
We're just talking about our experiences and being vulnerable and just kind of...
And candid and
and
authentic, really.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, now that we've got introductions out of the way, I think I'm going to go ahead and break into our questions. Now, this is a mixture of questions that the staff has come up with to ask you guys, you know, common questions that we think people are going to want to ask people who work as podcasters, and also some audience submissions from our Instagram. So I've got these organized in a way where we're going to kind of start off with questions that would affect you more at like the beginning of your podcast career. You've just started episode 1, and hopefully as we move through this, it'll become more stuff. All right, here's what we're at, you know, year 1, year 2, that kind of stuff.
Cool.
All right, so first question, and we can have one person from each podcast answer. We can have everybody answer, whatever we're feeling. Let's just answer that way, you know?
Cool.
All right, so how'd you pick your topic? And we can work left to right. You know, you were working as a director.
Okay, I was like, okay, so left to right? Oh,
He's like, camera left or camera right? TP, so...
So I started basically because I was like, okay, I want to do and pick a topic that I was interested in. And, you know, selfishly, I was like, okay, well, if I interview people that make movies and teach cinematography, then I'll learn And that's exactly what I did. So my wife actually pushed me. She was like, hey, you should do a podcast. And then a week later, I had a podcast going.
You make it sound so easy.
Yeah, well, with Maker's Gym, it is.
All right.
So, yeah, like, I mean, that's basically what it was. It was just, I picked a topic that I was passionate about, and I just started. And it doesn't feel like work to me, even though that's what I work in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if I could do the things my girlfriend asked me to within a week, she'd like me a lot more.
Indeed.
What about you guys? Too many movies?
Well, we're just a big fan of movies. I work in the industry. You work in the industry.
Yes.
He plays video games, so
me
whatever. But we've always we've been friends for 10 years, and we've had chemistry, talking about stuff and joking about stuff, and we've always talked about movies after the movie, and then it just...
We would spend 30 minutes to an hour after almost every film, like you name it, Planet of the Apes or just whatever, just sitting in the parking lot talking about the movie that we just watched. And it occurred to us at one point, we need to record this. This is, and we would be laughing and repeating each other's jokes for months and months afterwards. And those are still inside jokes that live with us now. And we're we kind of want to share that with people. And movies is the clear choice. And we did a podcast before that, a long time ago, that was movies and music and video games. And as we kind of went along, it's
metal. It was metal music.
Yes.
Metal music.
Really pigeonholing ourselves in there.
It was way too niche, and no one's going to listen to that. But we figured out the best part of doing this is talking about movies, and that's the central theme of this. So we kind of tried to pivot and maybe let's broaden our audience a little bit. So movies is just something that we love.
Yeah, you find yourself talking about movies 30 minutes to an hour. Hey, that's a podcast, baby.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, and I gotta remember the name of your podcast. I'm a terrible moderator.
It's
Jagged
Jagged
Little Feels. I promise.
Well, let it slide this one
Yeah,
time.
this one time.
Sorry.
Okay, no.
Give me money after the show.
Yeah. So I guess mental health has been something that's been very important and significant in my life. I've been dealing with anxiety and depression since I was probably 8 years old. And I didn't, growing up, I didn't know too much about it. Anxiety and depression, I feel like, is a little bit stigmatized. It's not really talked about, especially in the Black community, just mental health in general. And I just wanted to be able to help people by telling my story. And me and Taylor have been friends for about 4 years now. And
Actually, it's longer now.
maybe longer.
Yeah.
We're best friends. And she has also had her own bout with mental health, and we just kind of came together and was you know what, people want to hear what we have to say.
People want to hear that.
People want to hear this, so let's just do it. And she was just the perfect person to kind of create this with.
Yeah, we also just so happened to be entering into the quarantine time, like we said. So it was it felt very pertinent at the time to be okay, well, this was our plan. We wanted to start something, and we think we're so funny. We have skits. We got we have all these ideas. So to kind of and part of what makes us special, I think, is our willingness to be authentic with other people.
Yeah.
So,
and we do talk about some pretty
real and very vulnerable things. You know, and so. But, kind of doing that in a way that's funny and palatable and relatable, I think, is, in order to help others, was really kind of our motivation.
Yeah. Having those real heavy talks when you're being open and being casual and even throwing in humor, that's good. People should hear that.
They need that.
That is my brand. I love being morbid, and I love just kind of poking fun at myself and my quirks and being crazy.
Our own toxicity.
Yeah, our own toxicity of it all. That's me, so it just worked.
All right. Thank you for that answer. I guess we're ready for the next question, and moving through as we're still in these beginning stages, thinking about what we want our podcast to be. Is there anything that you wish you knew before you started your podcast?
Oh.
And we can work it this way this time, stage right to stage left. We can make it a little different.
funding.
Yeah,
I wish,
the funds
I
of
wish
it all.
I knew how
Wait, you guys
much.
get paid?
No,
No, that's the point. That's the problem.
Okay.
That's literally no. I just didn't know. I think everybody in their mind is like, I'm gonna
start a
I'm gonna
podcast.
start a podcast. Like exactly, like they want to hear what we're gonna say, so let's
Yeah.
just start one. But
there's so many little costs that go into doing that, and like
Yes.
the back end of things, the administrative aspect of
yeah,
things.
that we pay for everything,
Right,
And
we have
we
money.
have no money.
We have
so,
no money.
you know, it's a passion project for us
An
at this point,
expensive passion
an
project.
expensive one. And so I wish I
Knew that to be like prepared for
Yeah.
it in advance.
like save up.
Yeah,
and-
let me get my funds up first, and then
We
we
get-
can
right.
start this podcast.
exactly
All right. So first thing to remember,
funding.
it's expensive.
It's expensive.
Like many things, it will make your wallet hurt.
A little bit.
All right. Next piece of advice. Have we gotten?
I was going to say, I think right off the bat, like we just talked about, when we first started like a podcast in general, it was about too many things. And we were trying to do too much and talk about too many things. Like movies in its entirety, just talking about that was like the clear choice, and we didn't see that right away. Yeah, what do you guys think?
That's pretty much. Yeah, I mean, find your topic, I guess. Like something you like want to know when you first start is the form of your show will probably form as you're going, but find your niche. You know, find like, and it doesn't have to be. Don't make it too niche. Like we did our first show, like you said, was movies, metal, and video games. So it was like, hey, if you're like a metalhead nerd that loves movies also, and it's like, oh, so we did our podcast for ourselves when we did that.
Right.
So, I mean, the movies thing is very general. There's plenty of them, but you know.
And then also not to like stick with your first ideas either. Like it's
willing
one
to
thing to
experiment.
stick to a format, a general format, and another thing to like really pigeonhole yourselves and be like, oh, every episode we need to do this. You know, that's sort of a thing that you figure out along the way. Like you can't say by episode 100 we'll be doing this exact same thing we did in episode 1. It's you know, you have to be malleable in that way.
Yeah, but you said this was advice for when they start, right?
Yeah.
Something you wish you
something
would
you
have
knew
known
Oh, you wish I
before
would
you
have known.
got started. Yeah.
Be
Yeah,
well
sure.
versed in editing. I
Oh,
mean, I'm not. Krista's
Well,
an
yeah.
editor.
Yeah, Alex, is that really pertinent for you? Very important. You get to be well versed in editing, huh?
I'm learning as I go.
He shows up, he talks, he leaves.
That sounds great.
That's a pretty
That's
good
a
role.
That sounds exactly what I'm
That's
trying to
been
do.
the goal.
That's been the
since
goal.
day one.
Yeah.
I'm just Dick Cheney's vessel for his next heart.
I do
He's
think the editing
unfortunate-
is a good point.
It is a good
It's a
thing
good
to know.
point because
Yeah.
we at first were like, we found somebody on. Actually, they reached out to us on Instagram, like, hey, if you ever need someone to edit your podcast, and so like we literally kind of like learned to do it from him, and then
We were paying him too much.
we were paying him too much,
and then we were like, we're just going to do it ourselves.
right. I learned how to do it, and we just started editing ourselves. But that is a whole other job on the side. Like it's something to do each day of the week, especially if you're recording weekly. So the editing of it all, whew,
Yeah.
don't underestimate that. It's important.
Yeah, I think batching your content is a big one too when you're first starting out. My schedule is really hectic because I can be on set 1 week or a month. So just having podcasts like already pre-done is a big thing. And then also too, we talked about editing. Becoming more affluent and just better at speaking and holding conversations. When you do that, then there's less editing that needs to happen. So
Very true.
me being a person that likes to be behind the camera, I was like, okay, well, like in order to be a director of photography, I need to direct people in the photography aspects of being on set. And by being a better communicator, I'm able to do that through podcasting. So I think it's just been the batching of the content and then just working on myself speaking as well. You don't think about it. You're like, oh, I'll just start a podcast and start talking. But, being able to be an effective communicator at that as well is something that, like me telling myself 5-6 years ago, I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that is a benefit of starting a podcast and paying attention to that aspect of it.
That's actually a really good point you bring up. Like, this is our second attempt at a podcast, so we had some experience, but like you said, the communicating is huge. If you have guests, or even if you're just like banter with your hosts, like our first episodes, we're yelling over each other, we're talking over each other, it's just chaos. No one really wants to listen to that.
Right.
You got to kind of like we'll get better at being an interviewer or a host or a talk show person. Just like let the air, leave some room in the conversation, let them shine sometimes, then like find those gaps to come in. That's a really good thing for like when you start.
And not everything that you say is going to be gold. Like you have to be willing to.
They're gonna be dumb.
Well,
Archer.
I apologize, Chris. I don't mean to insult. No,
so
in
true.
all seriousness, like you have to be willing to listen to what your hosts and your co-hosts are saying,
Co-host, yeah.
and like really take that into account in your response, because you can be trying to hold on to an idea, and I still do it now. Like I'm not perfect at it, but you can still reiterate your idea while listening to them at the same time, and you have to figure that out when it's a recorded podcast like that.
Right.
Yeah, I used to try to hold on to a thought and then like wait for someone to finish theirs and be like, yeah. So this.
Here's my
Just like waiting for your turn to talk.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You really learn the art of conversation and like trying to not think of your answer, like you said, while the other person's talking, like, and not listen to anything that they're actually saying. And so being able to like hold the conversation, guide it where you want it to go, but also stay engaged and actually pay attention to what, is going on. Like that is a whole,
That's a lot going on.
that's a lot going on.
And like you're saying, with like people with social anxiety, that's hard too.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's kind of a beautiful thing to learn it as you're doing a podcast, especially like you said, you guys are talking about mental health
Ooh,
and
go
anxiety.
back to our first episode.
Or don't.
Yeah, or no, just get to like 15 or something. We got our
Quick interruption. How many of you right now want people to go back and listen to your first episode?
Ooh.
0 hands. That's what I thought.
I mean, they're up there.
I mean, they're up there. Yeah.
Our first episode is a TV show. It's called There Are Too Many Movies, and our first episode is a television show.
No.
It's complicated.
Yikes.
There's a complicated reason behind it, but yeah, yikes.
Yeah.
I saw the conversation kind of start to turn here at one point, so I figure I might as well ask now. Do we edit ourselves here? Do we have editors on contract that we're paying? What's everybody's preferred style to get the edit done?
I edit mine.
You edit your own. Okay. What about
Alex,
you?
you want to take this one?
I supervise Chris while he edits. Relies on me.
Yeah, I do all the editing. I do edit the show in Premiere. We record it in a free program called Audacity for the audio, and then edit in Premiere, and that's where we do all the social stuff as well. So yeah,
And Chris is an editor
I am.
by trade,
So
so
I
it
did
it makes sense.
Yeah.
Lucky,
Yeah.
I wouldn't complain about it as much since that's what you do.
Oh yeah. I'm so glad I can take that off your guys' hands. Yeah, I made the huge mistake of making my hobby also my job. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, we've outsourced it before, like we told you earlier,
Yeah.
but by the end of it, I was
Yeah.
doing it. I was doing the editing, which I am a singer. I do like work at a recording studio, and I have a lot of experience working, behind the scenes in that way. Not as a sound engineer or like an edit, but I know kind of the gist of it. So I had some frame of reference, but it was learning a new trade that ultimately like is in the wheelhouse that I want to learn stuff in. So it was okay, but I also am having other jobs, and so it really is, getting better at talking in general. We once said the amount of likes, those that
We outsourced,
clicking with your mouth. It's like, oh my god.
we outsourced one time to have somebody edit it, and they edited out all of our butts, and likes, and put it all in
a
one
track.
and then sent it to us.
We were so mad.
Like 45 minutes of butt, and
Right.
Exactly.
So that kind of helped. I mean, I heard that and I was like, oh, we have to change.
Oh yeah, we have to
stop.
we have to
You'd
get
be like,
better.
hey man, is this by the hour? Or
Yeah, I'm like, we're paying you for it. We weren't paying him.
We weren't paying him at all. Anyway,
Paying you for it.
Oh, okay.
no, he took it upon himself to
Yeah.
do that. But we were like, look, we're not paying you
We're not
for
paying
all
you to
that.
lollygag.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, that was an interesting little learning curve. But
Which program do you use?
I was using GarageBand,
Nice.
Okay.
and so we're just making do.
It sounds good though. I will say,
I felt like it sounded
sounds
great.
pretty good.
And the equipment that we had and used, I think made all of the difference.
Yeah.
And so you get a good recording on there. You don't have to edit too much, but
Here we are.
here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are. Hey, here we are. streaming on
live.
YouTube and Facebook, I believe.
Wait, this is
Wow.
live?
Oh,
This is
God.
live. Yeah, sorry.
We started this already.
But you guys, as podcasters, are in a pretty unique spot where you can upload your podcast to, say, Spotify, and it lives on there, and it's a podcast. But it also can be uploaded to YouTube as a video, and it's still a podcast, even though like the medium has changed. So as you guys have gone throughout your podcasts, have you made that jump to like upload video on YouTube or any other platforms besides like what you started on?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we first started this time around, we did a little planning when we started, but one of the things we thought about, we were like, well, how do you market a podcast? Like, you can't just like, it's tough to just post waveforms. That's kind of, it's tough. Like, you can do that, but we were like, well, we got to have video, like just for clips with text on screen, and then check the box of YouTube. And I think even if you're uploading an audio to YouTube, I think you should check all those boxes, because it's like, it's an avenue stream or revenue stream, which is, it's there. So you might as well check the box and like, it's like rolling the dice.
But
So-
also giving people every opportunity, like they cannot miss your podcast. You know, like, and a lot of people are working, and like that's how they'll listen to a podcast. They'll
have
throw it up on
preferences.
YouTube. Preferences, absolutely.
Or even country limitations I've seen. Like, people go to YouTube. YouTube is actually, people think of it as a video platform. It's actually the largest audio platform on the planet. So most people use that to listen to music. So, and podcasts. So, yeah, you should check all the boxes. Get it on everything. Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube.
We're on a
Clips on-
uspodcast.com. I don't know who listens to that.
Hey, we're on the internet.
I mean, but yeah, we're there. Like, if you search "There Are Too Many Movies," you will definitely find us. And yeah, I guess that's the reason for doing all that.
And I think hitting the, like, whatever's popular in social media, like TikTok has obviously blown up in the last year, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one for us, actually. We might circle back to that.
TikTok's just got that algorithm. It can find anything.
Dude, yeah.
That, like, we didn't want to be on TikTok.
Right.
Like, we were very much against it.
Yeah, we were
And
very reluctant.
I think Chris one day was like, let's just throw it up on there. Like, why not? And I think our first, like, viral for us, not like millions or anything, but 200,000 views in one night, I think.
Yeah, we can kind of trace back a lot of our increase in consistent listeners to a post that got sent around, mostly on TikTok. So we're very, like, all of our other socials are pretty like dwarfed when you look at our 30,000 TikTok followers, which is weird because we're a podcast and we're on TikTok, but we got listeners from that. A modest amount, but still, like, that's that kind of like jolted our start. So get on all the mediums.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
See,
We're
that's
on
what-
Patreon. We're on Patreon,
Yeah.
which, if you don't know, that's like a
Subscription.
a subscription service for people who want to see, like, we use it for bonus content.
Right.
And we just kind of started recording extra episodes and then adding the videos with that episode.
But that was something that we needed help with, is the, like, putting it on YouTube, doing the captions and like the fun transitions and edits and things like that. Like,
Yeah.
I was already learning how to edit the
Yeah.
podcast. Like, I can't,
It was
and
hard to
to run all that. I mean, that's just very involved. So I was like, we're gonna get this on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And that's about as far as we could get. But like getting on TikTok and getting on, I mean, we had an Instagram obviously, but like getting on TikTok, getting on YouTube was kind of like the next step for us. And I mean, y'all could help us with ours.
Maybe we can help us out.
Look at the content. You just put it up there. We
thank
can work
you.
together.
Chris will do it all. Don't worry about
Right.
Yeah, got you.
He does
It
so
sounds
much
like
for us.
you're the one who
Sounds like
talks
a
about it.
collab.
Right. We need a
Jagged
TikTok. We
Little,
need a
Too
YouTube
Many Movies.
channel. Yeah. We'll talk after
We'll
the
talk after
interview.
this.
I've never seen a podcast channel like end with the possibility that there could be a new TikTok house.
I mean, maybe.
This is TikTok headquarters, right? This is-
Where we are?
Oh yeah, and as for me, I'm a content creator, so wherever there's an audience, I kind of just go and speak in that language. So I focus a lot on my show notes, but like I've tried uploading just the audio to YouTube, but it's hard being that my podcast is a visual type podcast, but with copyright and things when I'm talking about movies and permissions, there's only so much I can do. So when we break down lighting plots or things like that, I tend to tell people, okay, go to the show notes because it's all there versus directly uploading it to like a YouTube or TikTok.
Yeah, but there's also like anyone can be on anything. Like Mark Maron is still only audio, refuses to do video. I mean, do whatever makes you comfortable too. But, yeah.
Mark Maron, for those who don't know, was the first and last podcaster to get a TV show.
Yeah. Yep.
So we talked about YouTube as this alternate revenue stream, outside of just direct wherever your main podcast is centered. But we also talked how YouTube can be difficult sometimes with copyright issues and things like that. And a way to help, kind of keep yourself afloat through that is sponsorships. So do you guys have any sponsorships? And if so, how'd you go about securing them?
For me personally, I've had certain gear sponsored. Just because of, building relationships with different brands, and they're like, hey, we'll send you this piece of gear, review it. But other than that, I haven't had any sponsors like that are monthly. They pay me a fee or whatnot, and then like it's all been out of my pocket too. So yeah, that's my sponsorship experience, if that makes any sense. What about y'all?
I mean, we were sponsored for a little while, for a moment there.
Do you want to explain what happened, Alex?
I don't
I'm
know
just
what
kidding.
happened.
No, I'm just kidding.
When it comes to sponsors, we've had a few. What was it? Manscaped was the biggest one for us, and they were. I mean, we reached out to them, and at first they were like, "Nah, like, no, your numbers aren't where they need to be." And then I want to say 3 or 4 months later, like we were just talking about, after kind of like our TikTok surge, they emailed us, and we're like, hey,
so it is now advantageous for us to talk to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And here we are.
And it went really well, and we made it a part of the show. But sponsorships in general are a part of the show. Like, and we're constantly hawking ourselves to anybody that will give us money. And we had a company that Chris is like somewhat, like they are in the same building as you, right?
Yeah, they're a design company. So yeah, we had Manscaped for a while, who basically paid us in Happy Meals. But then we had basically 2 friends who just liked what we were doing. So we did I would call them collaborations more than sponsorships, really. But they did give us money, technically. So that's
made it more of a bit than anything.
Yeah,
we made it part of the show. Like when we decided to do that, it wasn't about like, let's just read this and hopefully we'll get some money out of it. It was very much like, how do we incorporate this with what we do? And we're constantly talking about, hey, send us the bag. Apple, Amazon, because Amazon is a part of the show. We use like Alexa to tell us movie facts sometimes. She's terrible at it.
She's the worst.
She's the worst. And
shout out to Amazon, sponsor the podcast.
we're like, Jeff Bezos, send us the bag. Like this is free advertising, man. And the Chris's friends that have helped us out, like, we'll do ads for them, and they won't make any sense. It's like, oh, our buddy Kyle, go check out his Instagram.
Yeah, we were literally sponsored by just our friend Kyle.
Yep.
And that was the bit where it's like sponsored by Kyle, and everybody's like, who is this random guy that just sponsored a podcast? But then we were sponsored briefly by that design studio that I work with. That, as a joke, they would send us bad merch that we had to wear, like as a bit. So it's like just crappy merch.
Like a pink hat or something,
Yeah.
and it's just like,
Shout out to
there's
Lodge
no
26.
logo. Lodge 26, thank you.
Which camera? Which one? Which one is that?
Oh,
that one
the big
over
one.
here. Camera 1, camera 2. Yeah.
I've been staring at this one the whole time.
Switch it up.
I didn't see this guy. Sorry.
You're like, are you live switching it? You have a switch over there? Can you keep up with me? Are you doing live switching right now? Camera 1, camera 2, camera 1, camera 2, camera 1. Sorry, that's editor humor. Shout out to editors. All right.
Well, our Patreons.
Yeah, so
Our Patreons were our
our
sponsors.
pretty much.
And that was it.
Yeah, that was it. Well, we did have like you guys, a couple friends that.
How
that
dare
somebody-
you?
Uh-oh.
It's an audio form.
It was a crew member. I know it too. Sorry.
Oh, well, we did have.
Yeah, we had friends. We had friends in the beginning, like
Yeah.
Bo and.
Oh yeah,
like,
people did. Yeah,
just,
we had
like kind of send us money. I guess.
They did.
There
They
you go.
really did
Like,
that. That
yeah.
was our friends, Patreons, and then like right in the beginning,
Yeah.
our friends, they really kind of fell off towards the end.
They really did kind of fall off there towards the end.
But then we had the studio that I work at let us borrow our Studio B to record sometimes.
Shout out to Modern Electric.
Shout out to Modern Electric. I work there, so holler at me if you'd like to book some time.
Do not shout out other studios.
Oh wait.
in
Oh,
this state.
sorry. Well, that's a music. That's like a music.
It's a music.
It's a music
yeah,
studio.
it's
It's not the
completely
same.
different.
And we aren't?
Let's everybody calm down. Everybody
Edit all this out. Edit all this out.
Or you got to come home
They're
back,
scrambling.
man. I'm getting heated.
Fan over there.
Right.
Fan left. Fan left. No, so no really real, I guess, true
Yeah, no like
sponsorships.
brands that sent us stuff. Although we were asking.
Although we were asking.
You know us, y'all. We're
We
not
were once
afraid to
again
ask.
asking
Yeah.
for them to send us stuff. But, who knows what the future will hold.
Right.
Just to say, like, in our experience, we pitch almost every sponsor you can think of. MeUndies, I mean, all of them.
Yeah.
So
All
you're
of them.
saying just go ask.
Just go and just.
Yeah,
Bag,
you email, you
Slide in
ask
the
them,
DMs.
like, hey, this is our numbers, this is what we're doing, this is our show, here's a sample, and here's a sample of an ad that we've done previously, and just, like, you're very much, like, pitching yourselves to all these people.
Yeah.
And that's how we got, the one sponsor that we got. But that's how it works, You're not waiting for them to come to you.
Yeah, Josh does all the marketing kind of outreach stuff, so he's cold emailing. I think emailing.
See,
Cold emailing, cold
that's
calling.
But this is the thing, and I think I just wanted to kind of explain this here. Doing a podcast is a lot of work.
all of that.
Yeah.
And
explaining.
so all that between you three and all of that between us two, I have a child who's a toddler. She has 8 other jobs that she does, literally.
I have 2 dogs,
And,
okay?
and it's just like, and that was the one thing that I learned is that I was spreading myself super thin. And I would like to revisit doing all of these things,
Right,
but
right.
it is so much work. I mean,
Right.
to put out an episode weekly, which is exactly, 2.
right,
because we
2
do
episodes,
Patreon too.
Patreon as well. Right.
And so living your life and then still wanting to make this a priority, it's like you really have to have that.
yeah, and with only 2 people, I mean, you have like
2
social
incomes.
media, you have editing, you have if you want to put the stuff on TikTok and YouTube, you have outreach and cold emailing people. Like if it's like, so which one of us is going to do that today? Like,
My toddler just threw up on me. I'm not doing anything for the
Okay,
rest
cool,
of the day.
right,
Like that's like where that kind
So
of
I'm
goes
just going to
sometimes.
get this edited, and we're just going to do what we can do. You
Yeah.
know? And I guess, the mental health aspect of it all is being able to be like aware of your own limitations,
Right.
and just do what you can with what you have. You know what I mean? But we kind of veered off. But yeah, the short answer is no. We did not have any sponsors.
Yeah.
To circle back, I just want to say, it sounds intimidating, like a lot of work, but at the end of the day, if you want to do a podcast, do it because it's fun and you love to do it.
Absolutely.
Because you're going to do it for free for a while.
Right.
It's not, you can't come out of the gate getting bags. That's just not how it works.
Right.
Unless you're like a celebrity or
And you already
or
have a
like
platform.
somebody like unless you're somebody that has a platform and can just walk, and that's a lot of celebrities just walk into someplace, record, and then they drop it for the
Right.
rest.
Well, they have funding already, and they already have their platform built, so they already have a following.
Yeah.
That's
It's like
the biggest
built
thing.
in.
It's the worst.
It is. It really makes me kind of mad sometimes.
And they'll
I know.
always celebrate like, oh, we're number 3 on the top.
Oh,
Well,
love that
Really?
for you.
Really? Jack Shepard.
wow, wow, The Rock, love that for you.
Wow.
Yeah,
The
there's
Rock.
an
About
anti-Jack
that.
panel. Apparently.
Jack Shepard doesn't need a podcast, okay?
Hey, man, Armchair Expert is pretty cool.
Right.
No.
So
It's a mental health podcast. How dare you?
one thing I definitely see here is 3 podcasts that are podcasting for themselves and nobody else. And I mean that in the best
Wow.
way.
I'm
I-
podcasting.
We have no listeners.
We're shocked.
Question mark?
I mean you're podcasting because you want to podcast, because you have fun doing it, because you're having conversations you enjoy on topics you love to talk about.
True.
Yeah, it's just the
You
creative.
really saved yourself there. You really came back
Yeah,
around.
I always
really
do.
turned that around.
I
I like
always
how you
do.
did that.
And, we've already dispelled one myth about podcasting tonight, and that is that Dax Shepard does not need a podcast.
Thank you.
Aw,
But I
hey,
think we
I
can
like
all go
it.
through.
I like
I
it.
like kind of.
Hey, okay, go on.
And if you guys feel like this is maybe too close to the, the piece of advice you wish you had before you started question, let me know. We can move on.
Okay.
But what is one myth about podcasting that you just want to dispel? Put to rest. Bury it right now.
For me, I think the myth that you need a ton of experience and technical knowledge in order to do it. Podcasting has gotten a lot easier since I started, which makes it seem like I'm super old. I'm really not. But the fact that there's, tons of different ways to do it, and I mean, one of the biggest things about podcasts is there's not a podcast that's the same, and there's different mics, different software, like everything. There's not like a quality control aspect of it, which is good and bad. But I mean, if you want to do a podcast, you can do it. I mean, especially if you're here, are places that have access to mics and editing and everything.
Like Maker's Gym.
Yeah.
Right, but yeah, I mean, just podcast, just really do it. And I just feel like if you want to do a podcast, then link up with people that also want to do that, or just do it yourself and learn, because it's accessible now. I mean, I've done podcast episodes on my phone, honestly. So
Learning on the job is the fastest way to learn. So
That's very true.
True.
That, yeah, if we're talking general advice, just start.
It's a myth that you want to myth about.
Yeah, you
podcasting.
want to dispel a myth.
right, so you don't need a ton of gear.
I got one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all don't live in our parents' basements. I don't know where
All right.
that theory.
Well, we don't.
We don't. We have homes, right?
I do.
Presumptuous. Or did you finish your answer?
Yeah, that was it.
Oh, okay.
are you done?
Did you have any more to add? I would say a myth is that I kind of think that there's not one right way to do it.
Yeah.
Because you listen to so many different podcasts or so many different formats, and I think the important thing to keep in mind is that don't try to conform to someone else's format, don't try to be Brene Brown, don't try to be, you know what I mean? We're not professionals, so let's not
act like it.
Right,
Yeah.
let's not get on there. We used to have, a script kind of to where we adhered to certain show notes, and by the end of it,
Yeah.
by the end of it, it was just very night and day. Just do what feels natural
for
to
you.
you. Don't try to do it like somebody else,
Yeah.
I guess. There's not one right way to do it. It's whatever you're good at naturally,
Right. I think also just adding on that, just another myth would be that you need a big following.
Yeah,
You don't necessarily, I mean, it would be helpful. It's probably nice, but you don't necessarily need 100,000 followers to
Right.
start a podcast.
Right.
If you have an idea and there's 10 people that will listen to that idea, then there you go. That's a start.
Right.
And then there's 10 more people each week. And if you have a YouTube account, then there's probably more. And if you have
Right.
a TikTok account, then there's probably more.
Right.
And I
It's
think that's a
fine.
good way to just start, really, and
Yeah.
don't really care too much.
Ultimately, it's about expression,
Yeah.
right? So it's kind of like putting a song out there. If two people rock to this,
Then
then
we did
fine.
it.
Yeah, then we really did
Then we
that.
did it.
That's all. It's about your expression of your, whatever it is you have to say or do. So just try to stay in that authentic realm,
I've got a really good myth I want to dispel. I don't think podcast market is oversaturated. That people do think it is.
There's
and
too many of them.
There's too many podcasts and there are too many movies. And there's too many podcasts about movies. So we made a movie podcast. It's fine. But there aren't too many podcasts because there's always an audience for somebody.
True.
That's, I think,
Very true.
like just because someone listens to Dax Shepard, for example, or Mark Maron.
Y'all are really coming for him.
I like him. I'm defending him.
Oh, okay, okay.
I also look like a low-budget Dax Shepard, but it's fine.
I was kind of about to
Fine.
say.
Maybe that's why I don't like him.
Very interesting.
I see my friend.
I
It's
get
like,
it.
oh.
Oh, he said low budget. I am.
The great value.
Yeah.
Dang.
Great value, Dax Shepard. Camera
The
2.
roast of Chris
Yeah, welcome back to the roast of Chris.
Good.
But yeah, it's you can still start and do your thing. Don't be discouraged that there's a lot of podcasts and it's easy and everyone has one. There's always that meme like, oh, like what do you call 5 people in a room? A podcast or whatever. But you know the meme though. You know what I'm actually talking about. Yeah, but
Oh, memes.
yeah.
Oh, she's a
So,
meme
but don't be
account.
discouraged by that. If you've got something you want to say, do it. So
And you also don't have to be an expert in your field of
Yes.
podcasting to do what you're doing.
definitely
Make
not.
sure you disclaim it first.
Disclaim it because people
somebody
will come for you.
if you do not
You have
disclaim
to
that
be
you're
like,
not an expert.
yeah, every single episode, we would joke about just
Being like, we're not doctors. Please do not change anything in your day-to-day.
without first consulting your primary care physician and or your therapist.
Yeah, that's what we say
These
every episode.
episodes are meant to entertain and inform.
And inform. She practiced
Les
that.
is like, speak for yourself. I'm an expert.
Yeah, he's the one guy that's like.
He is
yeah.
the one actual
Thank you.
expert.
What do you think of the lighting, by the way? How's the cinematography here? What's the setup? You're like, not what I would have done.
I personally,
Well, actually, I love all of the light.
He's
I
getting
mean,
paid.
that's up to. Well, no,
Yeah,
it's
right,
it's
Makers
funny
is getting
because
paid.
I'm not a member here. I mean, yet. I love the
Okay,
good
space,
save.
but I mean, all of the gear I use, like, and that's why I'm just like, okay, well, I mean, I don't really classify myself as an expert per se, from a cinematography standpoint, where I'm just like, okay, I'm an expert. You
You
should
called
listen
yourself
to
Roger
me.
Deakins before we sat
Yeah.
down.
Who's Roger
I saw it.
Deakins?
Who also has a podcast, by the way.
Yeah, I know, and that's when I stopped.
He's like,
No.
lights.
But yeah, as far as from my perspective, I kind of I interview a lot of cinematographers and people that are more seasoned than I am, and then I interview film students. So there's this wide gamut of people that I bring on in all aspects of cinematography, and I don't necessarily say on the show, hey, I'm an expert, you should listen to me. This is just a way to do it. And when you present that information to someone, they can either choose to learn from it or go a different way. It's like editing something in Photoshop. There's not one way to do every single task. There's multiple ways, and one way may be a little bit better or faster. So,
All right. This next question I'm going to ask. I'm not looking at the cards. This one comes from the heart.
oh,
Because I listen to a lot of podcasts.
okay.
I'm a big podcast guy.
We didn't prep for these.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't give you guys these beforehand. One thing I've noticed about podcasters is that they're in a job in new media, and sometimes that can be scary for other people and a little bit hard to understand. So my question is, what is the boldest lie that you have ever told about your profession to a relative?
Oh,
I
I'm
work
getting
in
paid for
finance.
this.
Okay, that's pretty bold.
that's a good one.
the boldest fly.
I'm trying to think. It's funny because even though I do commercials and filmmaking and everything, my friends and family still see some of my work and they're like, "Oh, this looks like it could be on TV."
It is.
Like, I would be horrible at my job if I, like, okay. So, I mean, I just wanted to state that. I mean, that probably doesn't answer your question, but it, like, pierces my soul. Yeah. I just wanted to project that.
I'm glad I got that from your
Yeah.
heart. My question
There you
from my
go.
heart.
That's my heart.
Heart to heart.
Yeah.
So are you asking about things we've lied about the show?
Just the
or-
boldest
Your grandma's like, so what are you up to, Josh? And you're like, I do radio.
I like that the question implies we're liars right off the bat.
All podcast hosts are
Right,
liars.
Right, yeah, exactly.
I'm admitting to a lie.
I mean, like, even saying like we're a movie review podcast is a little, it's a little like not really. I mean, we're not critiquing film
Yeah,
on any level.
We're looking at like what Roger Deakins movie, and we're like, not what I would have done.
Yeah.
So dumb.
We're making dumb jokes about like dumb movies for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a review podcast, I wouldn't say. And then even like telling people about like what a podcast is, it's like, oh, it's like a conversation that's on the internet, and then they're like, go away, and I'm like, okay. Yeah, I don't. It's hard to lie about it, and yeah, it's just that. I think that's I guess the boldest lie.
Yeah. I don't think we don't really.
It's
do
a
too
mental
much-
health
Yeah,
podcast.
it's a
We
mental
gotta
health-
tell the
Right.
truth.
So honest and open.
Well, the thing is that I think for us, when we kind of came together to make the podcast, we wanted it to be vulnerable and real and authentic, and we do talk about a lot of serious things.
Yeah.
And so in order to help people, I feel like there's just honesty that needs to be there.
Right.
And so I really do, if anything, we're probably too honest.
Too honest.
So,
Yeah.
like, please stop talking to us about
I guess right. there are certain
trauma, we don't hear about
aspects.
this.
Right. There are certain aspects of like certain episodes where we're talking about our parents, and
Yeah.
we're talking about our daddy issues,
Yeah.
or like our abandonment issues or whatever, and those come from your primary caregivers, in the first 7 years of your life.
Yeah.
So, if granted everyone was doing their best from their place of awareness at the time, but like, they did some stuff that like still has me really pressed
trying to figure
today,
out.
like I'm really going through certain things that, well, that's on you, mom or dad, like,
Yeah.
so, I guess like it's not a bold-faced
If anything,
lie.
we're too open.
Yeah, if anything, we've said too
We've
much.
said too much.
Yeah,
Yeah, you guys
if
did.
anything.
I like
But-
warn my mom. I'm like, Mom.
Right, yeah, and
don't listen
there
to
are
this one.
certain episodes, like I'm talking about like my biological father, and like my mom listened to it and she like didn't agree with certain things, and I'm, so I guess there's no lying, but it is.
Maybe we should.
Maybe we should.
We should start.
There's been times where I'm like, maybe I
Gotten
should
in
have
trouble.
just not said the truth, but
sure.
Brings us to our next topic on mental health boundaries.
boundaries.
Oh, we did a show about that too.
we literally have had to,
There you go.
draw. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a lot.
I told my mom I don't cuss as often on the podcast.
That's a big lie.
That's a big lie.
I tell my parents, please don't listen to the podcast.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
fact, like you're
Please
gonna
don't.
find out things you might not
You don't
wanna
wanna know.
Yeah, so just you can sleep on our podcast. It's fine.
Okay, so what I have discovered is we have a group of liars and two good, honest podcasts.
Obvious.
about
We didn't say it. You did.
Right.
We are in the film industry. I mean,
Right. Right.
All right, so I'm in my last 3 questions here. This should be all fun from here. I think I've saved them pretty well. What has been your most memorable experience as a podcaster?
It's probably just seeing numbers shoot up. Not that they've ever been like
Okay.
super crazy, but the times they do, you get like a little rush.
Yeah.
I don't know.
getting 2 million views on a TikTok that we spent. I mean, we edit the show, or Chris edits the show
Yeah.
for hours and hours every week, and we did a 9-second just dumb joke of a TikTok. No editing. We just threw it up, and it got 2 million views for some reason. And we were
no
both,
reason.
Chris and I were both just like, damn it! Like, why is
Been this easy.
why
was
is this
mad.
the one?
I was mad. We spent so much time editing the show, editing clips, editing little chunks and highlights for social media. And the one thing that goes live is Josh was like, hey, say something funny when we start the Justice League. And then I did. And then it was 0 editing, no thought. We watched the Justice League, and 2 hours later, Josh shows me his phone, and it's this 9 that just goes off the page on TikTok. And we were just like, cool. Because I was mad, actually. You should be happy something like that happens. But I was like, cool. So I guess I just don't need to edit things anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, that's great.
no thought at all, as long as
That's
it's
funny.
But aside from those obvious brags, I will say one of my favorite things is when we started to get a few, I think, loyal listeners. You start to see like a number, 50, 100, 200 downloads a month or whatever. It's like a little following. Like those are real people. It looks like just a number on a page you see on a stat, right? But what we did one day, we started a Discord for our podcast, and I was like, man, we'll just
what
see
is
what
Discord
happens.
for people that don't know?
Discord is like Slack, or it's a chat program. It's a voice. You can have voice channels and text channels. It's just a place you can have like a community. So we've got general talk. We've got like a section for memes, music, movies. We talk movies, all that stuff. And they're like-minded people if they listen to your podcast. And like, we didn't expect much of anything. And then now we have like best friends everywhere. It's like, it's really cool. Shout out to the blood relatives, camera 1 or camera 2. They know who they are, their family. When you're there, you know. That's our slogan for our Discord. It's definitely not a cult, by the way. But
Or an Olive Garden.
yes, yeah.
When you're there, you're there.
When you're there, you're there, for sure.
Come to our Discord. When you're here, you are here.
Funny.
So shout out to all of them. But that was one of the most fulfilling things, because then it became real. It
Yes.
was like, oh, cool. Like, you're engaging with the people that listen.
And people creating art from your art as well. Like people like drawing us is just the craziest thing. Like that was a pipe dream when we first started doing the podcast. It's like, you know, wouldn't it be cool if like we didn't have to do all of this and like other people would create content for us. And yeah, we have very loyal listeners that will draw things and like create versions of our intro, like our theme song. It's that's amazing. Like that's my favorite part. It's like people care about us. That's the highlight for us.
Yeah, and it's like those are the and that only, I think that only happened, those relationships only grew because we opened up that platform to like a Discord to have that, and we got closer to them and all that stuff. So that's awesome. So that's the best thing about it so far for us.
Well, I would echo that.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
that
was
is,
literally thinking the same thing.
yeah, I would totally echo that. The most memorable part, I think, was
Getting messages.
yeah,
from
getting
people.
messages from people and like me, like being at the bar and you're like,
Yeah.
woo, you like doing your thing, and someone coming up to you and being like diving right into a mental health conversation and like,
Yeah.
hey, I was going through this, and they'll bring out personal details about your life that you shared, which feels way different when you're just talking to an empty room and recording it than when someone's like, so remember how you said you went through explicit detail about whatever, and you're just like,
Yeah.
oh, you really know that about me.
Yeah.
It feels like you suddenly that you're talking to somebody that really knows you really well, you know, and they've been following you along since day one. So
That's really nice. We did
Yeah.
an episode about postpartum depression, which I went through very severely, and I got messages personally from other mothers that just said, I'm going through it right now, and I don't know what's going on, but I just really appreciated that
Yeah.
you said the things that you said, and that is always, I mean, despite everything, all the headache and all the, whatever,
our little complaints here and
yeah,
there.
that is really having a mental health podcast and having
The
it kind of be
feedback.
reaffirmed
Yeah, that you're doing something and it's meaningful and
to other people.
Yeah, it was very validating that, you know, even when you can be unsure sometimes of your purpose, like on this earth, you know, like if nothing else, especially in an existential crisis.
Yeah, during a pandemic.
You know,
and
where you're
all
like,
this
what
stuff.
am I doing here? Like, does anybody care? You know,
Yeah.
like, but also just sharing, you know, from an authentic place and using your voice to help others feel seen and heard and not alone at the end of the day. You know, there was just, you know, a lot of really memorable messages from people.
Feedback.
Yeah, I think that was really validating and made me feel like, well, you know what? If I've helped that one person today, like I feel like I really did something,
Yeah.
you know, that I'm here for
not
a
in vain,
reason.
everything
Yeah,
that we're
nothing's
doing.
in vain. All of these little other, you know, things are all, you know, with meaning, you know, for that purpose. So
So I'm going to steal the question one more time, but I'm sure we've all heard this too. Like when you get a message from someone that says like, thank you, I worked an 8-hour shift or 12-hour shift today, and it's like, this is the shittiest job. Oh, sorry, this is the worst job ever, but you guys got me through it. Like listening to you
Yeah.
guys, and it's like, I used to do that, you know,
Right.
like I used to have
I still
terrible
do that.
jobs, and
Right.
yeah, like that's so comforting that we're there for somebody in that way.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like podcasting can feel like shouting into the void sometimes.
Totally.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting feedback.
Yes.
So yeah, so
Everyone
getting
out
feedback
there.
from a real person that's like, because I mean, everybody has listened to a podcast. Like, how often do you reach out to the podcaster? Not really.
Not often.
So,
Never.
but if you give those people an avenue to join and talk with you and have a community, I highly recommend that because it really is a great feedback and it's really validating and inspiring. So
We're going to have him set up our Discord.
Yeah, and our TikTok.
Yeah, and our TikTok.
Yeah, and I mean, everything that they said is the same for me. I mean, I've had people reach out as far as like Africa saying, oh, what I've learned on your podcast, you know, is better than, the film school that I'm at. And that's a big thing because my podcast is a lot more educational than entertainment. But yeah, all the messages, just saying, oh, like you said, you got me through, the job today or school or whatever.
The drive home, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, and then also too, one of the really cool things is because my podcast is a lot more interview based as well, where I interview other people. I've interviewed higher echelon cinematographers, and it's one of the really cool things is you think, okay, if I reach out to this person in this field, that they won't share information with me, or they won't be as accessible. And at least in my industry, it's not the case at all. You could reach out to people and they sure, yeah, I'll share all of my knowledge with you, and yeah, when I come to Dallas, let's do lunch. And it's just a really cool thing. So
Absolutely. Thank you. Last question from me here with this card. Save the best for last. We're going to have a blast with this one.
I'm an Aries, Zach.
Oh my gosh,
are they
really?
compatible? Two Aries
chart?
compatible?
Yeah, drop your
Actually,
chart.
Google.
Drop your birth chart.
No, actually, sorry.
Is there anything that you need to do legally to get started? That doesn't sound very fun.
Legally?
Oh,
Not to my knowledge.
start an actual LLC or like a business, or you don't have to.
You don't have to. But
This is not financial advice. We are not financial advisors.
yeah.
IG, everything.
Legally, we didn't do anything.
yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
No.
Make
I
sure you
mean-
don't play copyrighted music.
Yeah.
That's
Pretty much about
part. Being careful with clips like that, and
Ooh.
we always are.
Making sure that you're not slandering anyone or
Except for
talking,
Dax Shepard.
using
Yeah.
people's
Except for Dax.
name.
Yeah, I guess,
Except
yeah.
for Dax Shepard. Yeah, we can't be using anybody's real names, in
Right.
episodes. Like we've always used code names for our
Yeah. But I
boyfriends,
guess, yeah, but
or
if it's a bigger podcast, I feel like if it's a big podcast and you're talking some mess about somebody famous, then maybe not.
I mean, that's
local.
defamation
Local-
of character. That's important to remember. That's really
We don't
good.
talk too much about people.
We don't
though.
really.
Just-
Yeah,
we're
no,
not
not at all. But
mean girls.
that's not the show, the preface at all. But yeah, I don't think so. I think you can pretty much slide on in.
All right. No legal advice from our podcast hosts. I think we're just about ready to get started with the audience Q&A. So
wow. Fun.
if you guys have any questions that you're going to want
love
to
it.
ask our lovely panelists here, start thinking, start working those brain cells.
First guy's like, no.
All right.
Oh, we have a mic.
Don't want
Oh,
it.
dang.
This is exciting. Who's our first?
All right.
You can hear me, right?
Thank you. This mic should be nice and set. You had a question, right, Sarah? Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, you can sure go for it. You want people to know who you are?
Yeah.
I'll shake your hand.
How's it going? I'm Evander Boone. I'm a member here at Maker's Gym. And my question is, I'm actually in the process of starting a podcast myself, my first ever. And I have a full-time job that is very demanding, in terms of number crunching. And I was wondering, because of that, it affects my ability to create. I only have maybe 1 to 2 days during the week where I'm really creative.
Right.
So when you guys create your podcast, do you just run them off, run 2, 3, 4 episodes if you're feeling in a groove, or do you do you have a scheduled time where you start creating?
I think it's important to have a dedicated day in the week where you do your creative outlet things, and you definitely are not thinking about your real life job and your responsibilities and stuff like that.
Yes. That's absolutely same answer. It was always Tuesdays for us.
Yeah.
And that way we could have the episode, edited by Friday when we could post it. You know what I mean? So that was kind of our quick turnaround. But I had other jobs too, and Tuesdays were my only day I didn't have to use my brain in that way at all. So I could really kind of get into a flow state, and we did try to do several episodes.
You can do
at
that.
once.
You can record, but
It's kind of exhausting.
It's exhausting to record
Because
more
you're really
than one
putting
episode.
everything you have into this one topic, and especially we were doing different, subject matter each week, so to kind of we would have our notes or have our research done, you know, so, if at all. And so to switch gears and do a whole nother episode, there's also the time sensitivity of it to where it's like, if you want to be talking about current events,
Yeah.
you know, like we did an episode about getting our, well, not about, but we talked about getting our stimulus check.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, we have to release this during this specific time.
Yeah.
Otherwise the joke's not going to hit the same. You know?
Yeah,
So it's like,
exactly.
so just things like that to consider, you know what I mean? But the one day of the week where it's just podcast day, I think is key.
For us, we dedicate one day for doing the show, and we try our best to just record the one episode in that day. But when it comes to like extracurricular stuff, like, you know, the social media aspect and reaching out to people and like trying to do that other stuff, I do that. I don't turn it off. And I'm not like this sounds terrible. I'm not a hard worker when it comes to like.
Trust me, I'm not
When it comes to like my job, like whatever, man. I'm here from like 8 to 5 or whatever. But when it comes to the show, like I don't turn that off. This is the show to me is like priority number one, and like this is for us, and it just because I love doing it. It's our creative outlet,
Right.
and it's something that belongs to us. So you know, if you're that serious about it and you want it to be something that like eventually, like, you know, I don't want to say this, but like, you know, pay your bills one day, and you know, maybe eventually you don't have to worry about having a job like that you are working for somebody else. I'm just saying, you know, that's the pipe dream is to like, I want this to be the daily thing, and I will do whatever it takes to make sure that that's my number one priority.
Stick to a schedule, basically.
Yeah. And if you can batch the content, then batch it, depending on your show's topic or whatever. Yeah, if you can knock out a few, then that's great. If not, then, you know, just like they were saying, just pick a day and focus on just that one podcast or whatever. But if you're just starting, I would say try to start with at least 3. So, you know, instead of just saying, okay, here's a podcast, I'm going to upload it, got my first episode. If you do 3, then your listenership will, I think, grow based on the fact that they can listen to one episode and they're like, oh, I like this. Let me listen to the second one. And, you know, they're more likely to subscribe than just saying, okay, I got through that one. All right.
I gotta wait till next week.
Right. So I would say minimally, you know, try to do 2 or 3 if you're just starting out.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Another thing we did was the very first episode we did, we just dumped and deleted right after we did it, just to sort of like get nerves out of there.
Okay.
So we knew the first one we did would be bad.
And it was.
Yeah.
It was very bad. And then the second one was also not that great.
Wasn't going to mention that, but
Yeah. Yeah, just start, man.
Hey, so it's whatever amount of time later. You guys turn the mic off for the last time. What do you want your audience to have taken away?
Jeez,
That's a good question.
that's deep. That hurt.
Um,
That hurt to hear it.
You got him.
You turn the mic off for the last time, like, poo.
I'm just done. For me personally, that listening to their podcast wasn't a complete waste of time. You know, like listening to what I had to say or people that were on, you know, like explaining filmmaking or whatever. They're like, oh, I got something out of it, and they've become a better filmmaker, or they, you know, have learned quite a bit. And I mean, that's just for my personal podcast. I'm like, okay, if I never did another podcast again, people listening to it, they're like, okay, by listening to your podcast, I've learned lighting, camera work, etc.
hopefully just that was funny. I was entertained. That's all I'm trying to do. I don't know.
Yeah, as long as they laughed once or twice.
Yeah.
Neat. Great.
I also think that if someone that we don't know somehow is using like inside jokes that they learned from the podcasts, I think that would just, like, that's it, you know, some stupid joke that we made up. Like if someone's repeating that to somebody else.
We've spread our mental illnesses.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
For me personally, I really love Brene Brown, but she, speaks about how vulnerability is courage, and I think sharing your personal story and making yourself vulnerable, especially on a podcast where it's like anybody could listen to what you have to say, to sharing your own story heals you, and then it gives other people permission to share their story too, and so if they could take anything away from listening to our podcast, it's that, there's courage and vulnerability and feeling, liberated to just share. Mental health is a big part of my life, and I think that, destigmatizing and normalizing those conversations and just the sharing in itself, is ultimately, my personal biggest goal, and what I would hope they would take away.
Yeah, same. I guess if they just feel like they're not alone, that's just kind of enough for me. Mental health can be really isolating, and it can be really scary sometimes. And so if anybody can listen to us and be like, wow, like they really just spoke to my whatever I was going through, then that's all I wanted to do.
Right.
Here.
And also kind of like, find you one that can do both.
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
Absolutely.
They are out here empowered and like trying to, exhibit self-love and, femininity, but also like,
it's okay.
It's okay to like not
any
have,
of that.
Yeah.
Or have anything figured out.
Right.
And so that's kind of just our mission.
Yeah. The whole dichotomy of that, that you can do both is, the goal too.
Great.
Good question.
Awesome.
That was a
Thank
good
you guys.
question. That was a good
Yeah.
question.
Yeah,
Wonderful
he did great.
Nice.
Good evening. I'm Raymond Kemp from KempLeadership.com. Matter of fact, I'm Raymond D. Kemp on all social media, by the way. And because we're here at Makers, this may actually be the answer to my question, but when you began and now that you've been doing your podcast for some period of time, how open and welcoming are other podcasters within your niche or niche, depending on where you're from? How open and welcoming are other podcasters when it comes to networking and helping you with your own content, style finesse, and savoir-faire?
Isaiah.
Oh yeah, shout out to Isaiah. He invited me on his show years and years ago and got me into podcasting, and then that's when we started our first show. It's like the show that will not be named, basically. And then so I guess to answer your question, he got us into it, and then I feel like people that come on the show have a lot of fun too, and there's that aspect of it. We haven't collaborated with many podcasters yet because we also hit the pandemic, like right when we started to get steam, we hit the pandemic, so we couldn't do guests, we couldn't do collaborations and stuff as much. But
And we hated the Zoom podcast too. It was like, and
Sucks.
It was hard to
It was hard.
feel the energy and things
Yeah.
like the delay of the jokes. It was like not it.
yeah.
But Isaiah and his show, and it doesn't exist anymore, but like that catapulted us into like, oh, this is easy. We can do this. Like this is.
Yeah, we went on his show and we were like, we could do this.
Yeah.
But no,
He was
He
just
encouraged
very
us to do it,
welcoming.
though.
Yeah.
and we collaborated with his show a lot too. So everybody's been cool. We've reached out to some people about doing it, but because of the pandemic, we're probably, as soon as everybody gets their dose, we're gonna get back into all that. But yeah,
If you believe in it, I'm just kidding.
here we go.
We've had great reception from. We have a lot of friends that
Who
have
are
podcasts, podcasters, and so down to our friend Caroline
gosh, shout out
Craddock.
to her.
Yeah, Caroline Craddock.
Oh my goodness.
We went through a big shift with our show. We actually originated with 3 members on the podcast, and Ryan left the podcast in January. So it was like, then it was 2, and she took the equipment with her. And so we were like, okay, so we need to
figure this out. And Caroline Craddock,
she has a whole studio that
dedicated
launched
to
her own Caroline's Obsessions podcast. Shout out. And
Shout out.
so she had like a sign on the wall, and we were like,
it said Caroline's Obsessions at the back.
Right,
and we
we're like,
Jagged Little Feels.
yeah, we're like, let's put a little piece of paper up. She like let us use her gear, let us use her studio,
yeah.
and was just a huge angel. But I have So many friends. We had, of course, in Cowtown,
Yeah.
Fort Worth-based podcast who is, I've been on there before to interview.
They've been on ours.
They've been on ours, and other, just lots of reception from our podcasting friends who would kind of put us on and give us shout outs on their, much bigger podcasts. And so it's been, it's been very collaborative and, mutually supportive, I would say.
Yeah.
I've never really felt any competition with anybody's.
Yeah.
And
I guess we're both in the music industry, and like I feel competition all the time in my other areas of work, and so it was kind of interesting to come and podcast and like everyone's like nice to me.
Yeah, and everyone's like, yeah, oh, we love that. Nobody's like feeling like you're infringing upon their territory or anything like that. I mean, and also we're talking about mental health, which isn't a. I mean, I don't know about a lot of other podcasts.
Not locally. Not
locally.
Too many locally that are talking about what we're talking about,
right.
Which helps us locally.
There was space for us, but no animosity, all love and support. We've been fortunate.
Yeah, same here. I've had filmmakers that have started podcasts after me that I've brought on, and people that have had me on their show. So
I mean, ultimately, it's helpful to each other. Like,
right.
I had a friend, Stephanie Parsley, and her friend Lacey Claire, and they just started a podcast called "Oh, Here We Go," and it's helpful. They are shouting us out, and obviously we're going to share that. So they're pretty much kind of piggybacking off of our platform that we've already created. So it behooves you to, shout other people out, and it's going to get you shouted back out, So ultimately, everybody's scratching each other's backs,
One of, there's a Dallas podcast called Boozed Pod, which is like they do like scary stories and they get drunk while they tell scary stories.
We need to go on that podcast.
It's great. Shouts to Camille Monet. She's amazing. And she had this idea, which I thought was genius, in that she reached out to several podcasts, and I know her from this project we did, but she had the idea of recording an ad for her podcast, sending it to us, and like in exchange, we can record an ad and put it on her podcast. And that in a way is, I mean, that was so helpful.
That's really cool.
That was like a really cool idea that I wish kind of like, I guess we could put more thought into and like try to do that more often and reach out to other podcasts in the area. It's just, like in addition to like reaching out to publications and sponsors and all that.
That's the list of things we should do.
Exactly. Yeah. Reaching out to other podcasts to be like, hey, will you share our ad, and we'll do the same for you.
Yeah.
Well, there's podcast groups on Facebook as well. So I didn't know this until my wife does social media, and she has like a master's in it. It's a thing. It's crazy. But there's like podcast tours that, you can, if your podcast is on leadership, you can go to this Facebook group that has a ton of podcasters in it and say, hey, this is my podcast. I'm looking to, promote a book or promote my podcast or whatever. And then people will be like, okay, well, this person fits within my demographic of, being on my podcast or whatever. So that's just a resource as well where you can, get on other people's podcasts as well, or look for people that may want to be on your podcast.
Yes.
Sounds great. We have any other questions from the audience?
I have a question for the audience. Anybody want to sponsor our podcast?
Hey, show
Looking for
hands, show
sponsorship.
hands.
We'll take cash out.
Yeah, we're passing around tithe and offerings right now.
How much did Kyle pay?
Huh?
How much did Kyle pay? I want
Bags.
the Kyle rate.
Hey, one single bag, if you know
All
how
right.
much that is.
Okay, yeah.
One
A
single
bag,
bag.
about like 18 ounces. right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
If they had to back it up in a Brinks truck, if that gives you
Okay,
any.
all right. That's a big bag. One of our industrial bags.
Oh,
Yeah.
yay.
I just want to know about the duration and length of a podcast. Should it be like 30 minutes to an hour, or is there a certain amount of time you should
Great
make it?
question.
And also frequency of uploading.
We did weekly. We also had, like we said earlier, the Patreon, but we started out at like an hour. There was actually a time where we were above an hour
we
a
were
little
doing a
bit, and
lot.
we were trying to shave it down.
Now we're probably at like, I would say
45
like 45 minutes.
For us, 45 minutes has been the sweet spot.
Yeah.
30 minutes feels a little bit brief, but 30 minutes was the length of our of our Patreon episodes afterwards. So we would do 45 minutes to an hour for our standard podcast, Jagged Little Feels, and then we had Jagged Little Spills as our Patreon where we spill the tea. It's a little bit more HBO rating. The stuff that's not under, not like
we just share more pretty much.
We share more. But yeah, that would be 30 minutes. So that was kind of something short and sweet. But yeah, 45 minutes to me is like, also while you're doing stuff as a listener, I do listen to podcasts as well. And when I see podcasts that are like 30 minutes, it's like, oh, I know I can finish it in one sitting. And that's important to me.
When you think about like people's attention spans and stuff.
Right. Or
it's
even like a
at 40
workout,
minutes.
you know, it's like
minutes.
45 minutes to an hour.
Yes. That's perfect.
Max. When I see ones that are like an hour and 20 minutes, an
30
hour and
minutes.
I'm not finishing
I'm not doing
that.
that.
It's like,
You would love our show.
Oh, okay. No, I can't.
He is such a stickler for like trying to be under an hour, and like
Me too. Me too.
I try.
you kind of let it go a little bit, but there's this like if you listen to the show, there's this internal clock in Chris's head. It's like, great, sounds good, moving on.
Moving right along.
Welcome to There Are Too Many
I
Movies.
think shout out to the Discord again. One of them in one of our blood relatives, as we call them, it's our community, whatever. They said in the Discord, hey, take a shot every time Chris says anyways. And it's like, yeah, well, you know, yeah.
And we're like talking like in the middle of reviewing a movie, and he's like, all right, like,
You good? All right, moving on. What about you? What have you been watching?
or like we'll recommend a show, and he's like, that's great.
you can tell when they're just, okay, we're trying to move,
And then
move
like
on.
I love it, and I will just keep going.
Yes.
I will just keep talking about that movie.
Yeah, but to answer your question, like a podcast in itself, I think caters to long form. It's like, it's almost by definition long form, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, there's tons. Our favorite podcast ever was called 10 Minute Podcast. So it was a comedy sketch podcast. They just banked a ton and did it. But
Maybe the nature of your podcast would have something to do with
Yeah,
the duration of
I was
it.
just thinking about that.
Because when we're talking about mental health, it's like
Nobody wants to talk for an hour and 45 minutes about
point.
people
like,
don't care that much about
abortion.
us.
No one's
You
gonna
know,
do
they
that.
don't want to hear
So,
too much.
Yeah, it's
So
like
it's
not.
like we're talking about abortion or something.
no,
Like,
we-
let's
I
keep
mean,
it, you know, concise. We want to
Concise.
not ramble and like but so and
Yeah.
you know.
My
for too
favorite
long.
podcast does like episodes or like, but I guess it's like a murder podcast. So they do like 3 at it, like episode 1 or part 1, part 2. So that way they're not doing like 4 hours of like
uploading,
murder.
and then you have to find your spot.
Right.
You know,
We're not Joe Rogan. We're not trying to do like
Oh,
5
yeah,
6
it's
hour
like-
We wouldn't have
episodes.
invited him.
we're not Joe Rogan in many ways. But a general rule of thumb, I would say an hour is solid. I would say shorter is better if you wanted like a rule of thumb. Like
Yeah.
it's better to leave, as an editor, I'm biased, but it's better to leave someone wanting more than to bore them.
Yeah.
So
Facts.
it's always, if you're airing on which way to go, shorter.
Yes. Great.
Trim
point.
it up.
Trim it up. Trim
I've
it
done
up.
15-minute podcasts. I've done up to an hour. So, and like my podcast is very much more loose in the sense that a 15-minute podcast could be something motivational or a quick tip. And then I could have interviews that go longer. So, I mean,
about this art form.
yeah.
You can do
Art form.
Right. It is an art form. But that's something, I mean, just a quick little thing at the end is just like, you make the rules.
Yeah.
You can do
Yeah.
anything you want to. And that's kind of goes back to like, there's not one right way to do it.
Yeah.
You can do, like, that's so liberating, the idea of just, oh, a 10-minute episode. Like, and I've heard other people like Mark Groves on Create the Love. He'll just like be on his walk and he's talking. He's like, I just felt inspired. And you hear him being like, hi, how are you? To other hikers. You know? And she, you know, it's like, he's really like outside just recording from his phone and doing a quick 10, 15 inspired message that he just felt like was like laid on his heart. And I want to share it right now. And there's something really cool about that, you know, and authentic. I don't, for some reason, I've never felt like brave enough to do that, but it's like, you can make your own rules. You can do whatever you want to do. Nobody's like, you know, deciding for you. So,
So true.
you know.
It's hard to talk about the Justice League, a 4-hour movie in 1 hour. Sorry, Chris.
It's fine. It's fine.
All right. I think that just about brings us to the end of the panel, guys.
Awesome.
Thank
Shout
you
out to
guys.
Maker's Gym for doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so
Thank you
much,
so much
for
for
having
having
us.
Having
And shout out to Chris's blood relatives.
Yay.
All right, guys. Yeah, let's get one last big hand.
Oh, ta-da. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for joining us. I think most of them are going to stick around for another little bit of time. We can mix, mingle. You can ask them some questions if you want. I'm going to be hanging out, but I, am on the clock, so they won't let me drink.
Cool. That's it.
Cool.
And done.
Boom.
Thank you.
All right.
That was fun.
Great job, guys.